spring has sprung, and just those few words seem to lift the spirit. And today I'm here to share 10 spring books that will also lighten your mood. Hello book friends, I'm Jen and welcome back to my reading life and welcome to another seasonal reading video. I am here today to share some books that I think feel like a breath of fresh air as spring has come upon us this year. And I think we could all use a little bit of that, don't you? Today, I'm here to share 10 books. I have a mix of nonfiction, a couple of middle grade, and a children's book, and then just some light fiction that I think is perfect for when the weather starts to lift and the sun comes out and your mood starts to change. And I think these books will be exactly what you need to get yourself in the mood for spring, especially if maybe the weather isn't cooperating where you are. These books are guaranteed to put a spring smile on your face. Without further ado, grab yourself a nice warm cuppa and let us get into some spring reads. First up, I'm going to share a book that I actually just recently mentioned in my book haul video. And this book, while I have not finished it, I can already wholeheartedly recommend it. And that is A Poem for Every Spring Day, edited by Ali Asiri. And this is just a lovely collection of quite short poems, one for every day from March 1st through May 31st. So of course, this is the perfect time of year for this one. This book is part of a series, so there is a poem for every season of the year. And what I really like about this book is that it is geared actually towards a slightly younger reader. And as such, at the beginning of each poem, there's a little bit of information. So if you look here, you can see there's a little blurb here at the top, and then the poem is underneath. So it will give you either some background information about the poet or the poem itself, or just that poet's style in general, or maybe something about the meaning behind the poem. And I think that's really helpful, especially if you maybe struggle to get into poetry or understand it. I think this is a very accessible way to get yourself maybe interested in poetry, maybe find a few poets that you really enjoy. And because the poems are so short, it's very easy to just sit down and read one of these every day. And I am thoroughly enjoying working my way through this lovely little collection. And like I said, though I haven't finished it, I highly recommend it. Spring is always the time when we get ourselves back out into the natural world as the weather starts to get warmer and we are able to spend more time outside. And so I always think that books that have to do with the natural world go hand in hand with springtime. And I have a lovely nonfiction book here to share with you about a beloved children's series. And this is The Natural World of Winnie the Pooh. It says, A Walk Through the Forest That Inspired the 100-Acre Wood. This is by Catherine Alto. And I adore this book. It is actually broken down into 3 different sections. And first we have the creation of a classic, the collaboration of A.A. Milne and E.H. Shepard, and then exploring the 100-Acre Wood, origins of the stories, and then a visitor's guide, the flora and fauna of Ashdown Forest, the inspiration for the 100-Acre Woods. And this book is filled not only with E.H. Shepard's beautiful illustrations from the Winnie the Pooh stories, but also photographs of the real 100-Acre Woods and the areas that inspired A.A. Milne. And it is such a lovely read, and it is just perfect for spring. If you loved Winnie the Pooh, which who doesn't love Winnie the Pooh? I adored Winnie the Pooh. I actually named my very first cat that was given to me for my 5th birthday Tigger, because I loved Tigger. I loved Tigger's mantra that the wonderful thing about Tiggers is I'm the only one, and that just spoke to me as a child. And even though my cat was gray striped and not orange striped, I still named him Tigger. And yes, always Winnie the Pooh and Tigger will hold a close spot in my heart. Although in truth, I probably empathize the most with either Piglet or Eeyore, depending on the day. But if you were a fan of Winnie the Pooh as a child, or you read these stories to your own children or grandchildren, then I highly recommend The Natural World of Winnie the Pooh. It is a wonderful companion book and one that is perfect for spring. Next up is another little book inspired by Winnie the Pooh, and this book is Pooh's Little Instruction Book inspired by A.A. Milne, and this is just filled with little quotes and thoughts or instructions for life, such as, if you secretly get into a kangaroo's pocket and she begins to jump away, be prepared for a bumpy ride. And then there are quotes from Winnie the Pooh, such as, we can't all, and some of us don't. That's all there is to it. Of course, Eeyore said that. But this is, again, just a lovely little book. This came out in 1995, and I have had this book ever since then. It also has Ernest H. Shepard's illustrations in it, so it is just so wonderful to peruse through, and you can just kind of put this on your bedside or next to your reading spot and just pick it up and dip in and out of it. But I think it's lovely and inspiring for spring when we are maybe starting to feel a little bit reinvigorated, a little bit like we have some maybe motivation or inclinations to do things in life and outside and get out in the world. And so if you're in need of just a little bit of inspiration at this time of year, then Pooh's Little Instruction Book is wonderful. Next, I'm going to share a children's story that is part of a series that I have just recently discovered in the past couple of years and absolutely fallen in love with. And while it's written for children, I think it is equally as charming for adults. And that is Brambly Hedge by Jill Barklam. And this is a big bind up of the collected works of Brambly Hedge. I have it in this lovely slip-covered edition. Here is what the cover looks like. And the Brambly Hedge story I'm going to recommend is, of course, the spring story. And that happens to be the first story in this collection. And it is just, look at that. I love the illustrations in Brambly Hedge. It's such a charming, charming series of books. You know I love anything that is little and tiny, and so Brambly Hedge just speaks to me. These are the tree houses that the little mice live in and all their little rooms and all of their little tiny things. I just love everything about Brambly Hedge. And this is just sweet and very spring-like, and you can get the collected works of Brambly Hedge. You can also find the stories singly, and that was how I first came to them. My library had a number of them and I checked them all out and just binge read through them, and they're delightful. But in my collection I have not only the spring story, but summer story, autumn story, and winter story, the secret staircase, the high hills, sea story, and Poppy's babies. The stories are all very seasonal, so you can get this complete collection and then have stories ready for any moment of the year when you're in the mood for some Brambly Hedge. But of course, spring story is the perfect one for this time of year. I love the quaint, charming simplicity of these stories, and I cannot recommend them enough. If you didn't discover them as a child, then definitely give them a read as an adult. I highly recommend them. They will definitely bring a smile to your face. Next up, I have a middle grade book recommendation, and this one, while it's not set in spring, it actually traverses quite a number of the seasons. It does end right at the start of spring, and so I think this is a lovely book to pick up in the springtime, and that is A Place to Hang the Moon by Kate Albus. This book is set right at the beginning of World War II, and we are following 3 siblings, and their grandmother, who has been their guardian, has recently passed away, and the 3 of them no longer have anyone to take care of them. And the family's lawyer concocts a plan to send the children out into the countryside, because this was the point in England where children were being removed from London and sent to live with families out in the countryside to keep them away from the bombings. And so he thinks if he can get the 3 kids out to the English countryside, that perhaps they can all stay together. Because if they stay in London, they will most likely be separated. And so he sends them off to the countryside. And the children do go through some difficult situations. I won't lie, there are some challenges that happen in the early parts and the middle of this book. But then they discover the library and the librarian in the small village where they are billeted, and then things start to change for them a little bit. And I love this book because it's wonderfully bookish. There's lots of references to children's books in here, and it is also just a wonderful story about found family and about sticking together through the hard things that life throws at you, and how good things can still come out of difficult and tragic circumstance. And so this is ultimately a heartwarming and uplifting story, but do know that there are some difficult things that the kids are going to go through in this book, and also know that it's all going to be okay in the end. But I just think this is such a lovely story. It's perfect for bookworms. If you like libraries, if you like books in general, then definitely give A Place to Hang the Moon a read this spring. Next up, I'm going to recommend a classic coming-of-age story, which I think really needs no introduction, and that is I Capture the Castle by Dodie Smith. This is one of my very favorite books, and I love the first line of it, which is, I write this sitting in the kitchen sink. And in this, we are following Cassandra, and she is writing in her journal all about her life. She lives in this rambling, falling down, decrepit English castle with her family, who used to have money but have fallen on hard times. Her mother has passed away. She has an older sister. And this really chronicles what happens to her and her older sister and her father, who's a writer, but has been struggling for quite some time, when some American young men come and make their acquaintance and have sort of moved in next door or bought the land next door, I forget which, and we watch as Cassandra and her sister's lives blossom and open up and change. And this is just such a lovely and charming story, and if you have never read it, please do so. It is absolutely wonderful, and it is a perfect spring read. It starts in the springtime, and I just think coming of age really kind of fits with spring. It's sort of that blossoming of usually a young girl's life, or even a young boy's life can blossom at that time, just as we have flowers blossoming in the spring. So I definitely recommend I Capture the Castle as a wonderful spring coming of age story. Next up is another favorite book of mine, and this book is one that I love so much. I read it twice within about 6 months, and that is Near Neighbors by Molly Clavering. This is such a wonderful story, and even though it's really set mostly during summertime, I do think it makes a really wonderful spring read as well, or maybe even to read on the transition from spring into summer. And that's mostly because while this isn't really a coming of age story, we have in this a spinster who sort of has a reawakening in her life. And to me, that just feels very refreshing and spring-like. And this is just such a charming story. In this, we're following Dorothea. Her older sister, who has really ruled their lives with an iron fist, has recently passed away. And Dorothea lives next door to a really big, boisterous family who she is quite enamored of kind of watching from her windows. And then because of the death of her sister, one of the girls in the family comes over to offer condolences. And as a result of this, Dorothea gets then sort of enmeshed with her neighbors' lives. Things really start to change for Dorothea in the most wonderful ways. And this is just an absolute gem of a book. If you enjoy D.E. Stevenson or Angela Thirkell or authors like that, definitely give Molly Clavering a read, and I highly recommend starting with Near Neighbors. It is a wonderful, wonderful book. And actually, from this book is where I came up with the name of my Book Jenny's Patreon tier, because there is a phrase that is used in this book called Tea Jennies. And a Tea Jenny is somebody who is obsessed with tea. And I thought Book Jennies would be perfect for people who are obsessed with books. So I now have a very strong connection and affiliation with this book, and it will just always, always bring good memories to my mind. And it will definitely be a book I read and reread over the years, but it's just utterly charming and I cannot recommend it enough. Next up is a book that is the start of a series, which should be very familiar to many of you, but I wanted to mention it here just in case there's anyone new or anyone who hasn't yet heard of this series or picked it up. But I think springtime is the perfect time to start it. It starts on March 5th, so this is the right time of year for it. And that is The Unselected Journals of Emma M. Lyon, Volume 1 by Beth Brower. And this is the story of Emma M. Lyon. It is set in London in 1883 in the fictional neighborhood of St. Crispian's. And this story begins when Emma first returns to London after having been gone for quite some time. She is an orphan and she is moving into Lapis Lazuli House, which is her home, where her cousin Archibald also lives. He is actually a cousin by marriage, and he has rights to stay in Lapis Lazuli House for reasons that you'll find out as you read the books. And they have a very cantankerous relationship, and you follow along with Emma. She is rambunctious, she's charming, she's bookish, she is just such a fun and endearing character. And if you have not read these yet, I highly recommend them. Now, I will say that there's a little bit of magical realism that happens in this series, but I think it is done in a way that works absolutely perfectly. And I don't mind a little bit of magical realism in my stories, especially if it's done in a way that feels like it's still grounded in the real world. And this series very much does that. So far, there are 8 volumes in the Emma M. Lyon series. They're all sitting right here. We are anxiously awaiting volume 9. I know Beth Brower is currently writing it, and hopefully it's supposed to be out later this year, fingers crossed. But in the meantime, if you haven't yet discovered Emma, or perhaps you want to revisit Emma, this is the perfect time of year to pick her up again. She is also available on audio, and the audio narrator is wonderful. And I did host a read-along of all of the Emma M. Lyon books on my channel last year. So if you do decide to read these, you can head over to the live stream tab on my YouTube page, and you can find links to all of the replays of all of the discussions of every volume. So feel free to check those out if you so desire. We talked all about Emma M. Lyon and her world from volume 1 through volume 8. So be sure to check those out. But I can't recommend Emma M. Lyon enough. I love it. Cannot wait for volume 9. Next up is a book that features another very quirky character, and that is Clooney Brown by Marjorie Sharp. Clooney Brown is such a unique character. The story is set, I believe, right at the beginning of World War II, and Clooney Brown lives with her uncle who has raised her since she was orphaned as a young girl, and Clooney doesn't really know her place in the world. While she's really of the working class, she does things like takes herself to tea at the Ritz, and her uncle is sort of at his wit's end about her, and so he ends up kind of sending her off to be a maid on a country estate, thinking getting her out of London is the best thing for her, and she'll have to buckle down and learn to do her job and, you know, kind of learn her place in the world. Does Clooney Brown really do that? You'll have to read it and find out. And so then the story takes us to Friars Carmel, and this is the English country home where Clooney is going to be working, and we meet the owners of the home and their grown son Andrew, and then they also have a friend of Andrew's who is a Polish emigre staying with them as well. And so things sort of start to happen as Clooney arrives and we see sort of the machinations of the family and what's going on in the dynamic there. And actually it's funny because I thought Clooney would be a more prominent figure throughout the entire story, but she kind of comes in and out. So do know that going in. She will pop up again from time to time, but it does focus at different times in the book on different members of the family and what's going on and other members of staff and things. So this was such a fun book. This is laugh out loud funny. Clooney Brown is so quirky and unique. And the ending of this, oh my goodness. You just have to read it and find out. But it was a pure delight to read, and I think it makes for a great spring read. And my final recommendation for spring reading is a book by one of my very favorite authors, and that is Listening Valley by D.E. Stevenson. I received this book in my Small Home Comforts book box last spring, and it was absolutely perfect to receive and read in springtime. It starts, I believe, at the end of March, and we follow Tanya, who has been she's grown up in the Scottish countryside, and then when her sister gets married, things start to change in Tanya's life. And so then we see Tanya going off to London, and this is right at the start of World War II. And so we get a bit of what life was like in London during that time. And then there's a tragedy that sends Tanya back home to Scotland, and life starts to change for her yet again. This is another wonderful, very much feels like a coming of age story. And I loved Tanya as a character. I just thought she was so endearing, and I really just felt for her and the things that she was going through. And D.E. Stevenson has such a light touch with things. So even though there are some difficult things that happen during Listening Valley, it is still overall such a lovely, uplifting and heartwarming story. And I can't recommend this enough. It's one of my favorite D.E. Stevenson books, and I really need to reread this one. Might have to happen this spring. We'll see. If not this spring, next spring for sure. But I highly, highly recommend it. I think most D.E. Stevenson novels make for great spring reading, but this one in particular, I think is perfect for this time of year. And that will do it for my spring book recommendations to lighten your mood. And I hope you found something in this video that called out to you and maybe you want to add to your own spring TBR or pile of possibilities. Definitely let me know down in the comments below. Are you going to pick up any of these books? And what is a book that you love to read in the springtime or you think would make for a great spring read? Let us share all things spring reading down in the comments below. And if you're here, but you don't have anything you'd like to add, but you'd like to let me know that you made it this far in the video, why don't you leave some spring flower emojis down in the comments below? I really love seeing those, and those comments really do help my channel, and I so appreciate it. And if you enjoyed these recommendations, but you're curious what I'm thinking about reading this springtime, over on my Patreon, I just posted a video where I pulled a bunch of books off of my shelf that felt like spring or that I thought I might be in the mood for this spring, and I shared them all over there. I'm sure some of them will make them on to my upcoming piles of possibilities for each month, but we shall see. So if you are curious about what's on my spring pile of possibilities, you can head on over and join the Book Jennies. And I'm actually having a special going on right now. You can use the code COZYNOTE to receive 25% off either your first month or your first year on my Patreon, depending on which subscription you sign up for. So from now until March 31st, you can use Cozy Note and get 25% off your subscription. If you would like to join us, check us out, see what my Patreon is all about. And if you're not able to join as a paid member of Patreon, you can always sign up for free and you'll receive my weekly newsletter where I share behind the scenes, what I'm reading, what's happening over on my channel and on Instagram, and all things Jen's reading life. So if that is interesting to you, I would love to have you join us over there. The link to my Patreon is down in the description box below, so you can click that link and join us in whatever way works for you. I would love to have you there. Thank you all so much for being here, for taking time out of your day to spend it with me in my cozy corner of booktube. And also thank you for all of your lovely comments on my recent videos. I so appreciate hearing from all of you. And as always, I'll be back with another video very soon. And until then, I wish you a good book and a warm cuppa. Bye!